We're joined by Abahlali baseMjondolo, General Secretary Thapelo Mohapi. Thapelo, thank you so much for your time. Just moments ago, we saw President Cyril Ramaphosa visiting, several areas. His last stop was in Nduzuma, and he was basically telling residents that the situation is catastrophic and it is dire. When he left, residents unhappy, telling our reporter Ayanda Mhlongo that the president didn't so much as go into the homes to see the affected areas. What more do you think President Cyril Ramaphosa and the government of South Africa should be doing?
Thank you very much, Onaxi. It's a pleasure to be here. Look, we are a province in disaster. Yesterday, we rescued a number of people in Terre State, where people who were their shacks along the river banks were actually washed away. We have a 3-month baby that was killed in Cato Crest. So we are indeed in a disaster. Right now, the rain starts, and I'm looking up and I'm worried because in the community where I am, 2 informal settlements were washed away, and people lost everything. People have no hope. People have lost hope. So I understand the frustration and the anger that people have, because they know very well that even if there is budget that is allocated to this disaster, it will not end up to the people on the ground, which is why they wanted the president to go to the ground and understand the situation that people are facing on the ground. The only way that the government can understand the situation is when government goes and see where are the conditions which people are living under. People in the informal settlement, in the townships, in the low-cost housing, they are living on the banks. Their houses are just hanging, and anything from now on can happen if this rain continues. We've been here before. This is not the first time that we faced this situation, and we are calling upon everyone. I'm happy that the president is calling on us to work together. There's no time for politicking. We can't politic with people's lives. These are people's lives. We can't politic about poverty. People are poor. People have been living under these conditions. And it's unfair, unjust for a government that only comes to people when people are facing such a catastrophic situation. The government should be there to assess the situation from scratch. We need decent housing. We need decent housing now.
And in fact, some local businesses in the area were saying that, this is not new to KZN. We've seen these devastating floods, if you have to look back, 2017, 2018. And, business saying that that the damage is made worse because of just some of the work that is not being done by local authorities in KZN, in as far as it relates to, maintaining infrastructure and preparing for eventualities like this. I mean, you just talking now about the damage in certain areas. We know that in Reservoir Hills, we understand, informal settlement floods swept about 100 shacks in one go on Monday.
Yes, in an area called Kwamamsutu, informal settlement, in fact, people are living along the Umgeni River. When the river overflowed, it took a number of shacks. A number of people lost their lives. As we speak now, there are people who are unaccounted for. Some of the people's families are in the rural areas. We have people who are coming to identify where people used to live because the entire family sometimes was washed away. So, yes, of course, there is an issue with the infrastructure, particularly in Durban, how the roads have been built. But at the same time, people are desperate and occupy land that is along the river banks because of the failure and the political will of the government to provide suitable land. People are evicted in these other pieces of land, and people then opt to build next to the rivers because people are coming from the rural areas in desperation, and they occupy anywhere else. And those people are now facing the consequences. And it's not their own doing. It is because the government of the day does not provide suitable land for informal settlement. And we are calling for government to work with Abahlali baseMjondolo and other stakeholders with this regard, so that we do a reblocking and remove those people who are actually alongside the riverbank, so that we provide them with proper space, so that we don't we don't become on the receiving end again, where we are faced with these. We are living under very inhuman conditions along the river banks, and people's houses, homes have been now washed away because people have been evicted in these pieces of land, and they opt to occupy land that is very dangerous on the banks. And that is the doing of the government. And the government must provide land for the people to build proper structures.
When you begin your conversations with government, just following on what President Cyril Ramaphosa has been saying, if you start looking at long-term measures, especially if you look at the low-lying areas that we are now talking about, what are some of the measures you would like government to do in the province immediately, considering that they are saying that they are dealing with the land issue?
Yes, the land issue is an urgent issue. It's an issue that has been talked about for many years. And I think municipalities must come out now, because when it comes to expropriation of land without compensation, municipalities have never had a problem. There is land that is owned by people who don't use it properly, and therefore that land must be given to the poorest of the poor. People must be moved away from the river banks. People must be away from dangerous places. And then there's plenty of land, particularly in the city of Durban, that is used for profit, whereas the poorest of the poor continue to die and live under inhuman conditions. If it's not shack fires, it's the floods. This time around, we are in the receiving end because of the floods, the nature itself. So we are calling on the government to now lead us. We want to work with the government as Abahlali baseMjondolo to ensure that people who are living under inhuman conditions, those who are living in very dangerous places, those who are now, as the rains is about to begin, who are afraid that their loved ones are going to, where they're going to sleep. We are saying that government must make the issue of land an urgent issue, and that people must be moved away from these dangerous places, and these dangerous places must be fenced so that people don't continue to occupy those places. But if land is made available for the poor and marginalized in this country, particularly those who are moving away from the rural areas to seek better opportunities in the cities, we would not be in this crisis. We would be living like any other middle-class person, because we would have built proper. And the other thing is the security of tenure, which people build structures that are weak because they don't know when they're going to be removed. People are removed forcefully by the anti-land invasion units, the Red Ants, and the law enforcement in Cape Town, in some of these places, and then people end up not building proper structures. People just need land so that they can build proper structures, so they can live a decent life. We need decent housing now, and we are not saying that government must provide all of that. We are saying government must provide land for those who can manage to build their own houses, and build houses for the most poorest of the poor in our communities.
Organizations that are providing aid currently there in KZN have essentially called this a humanitarian crisis. Now, when you start to engage with departments like the Department of Social Development, particularly when you look at just the devastating loss, I mean, just the picture that we are showing there now is a picture that was taken at Quarry Road, where people have lost essentially everything, including important documentation.
Yes, yes, we are happy. I must mention this, particularly with the Muslim community in Durban who have come in the forefront. Right now, I have comrades from Cape Town who want to assist, and I think it's this high time that we continue to build the spirit of Nelson Mandela, that we should not be alone under this condition. And I'm speaking as a shack dweller myself, who is facing this devastating situation, that we need to work together to help those who are in need. We need to help those who lost their loved one, but we also need to find ways to actually make those who are angry, their anger is understandable, to understand the situation so that we move on forward. I mean, people have come up from a hard lockdown, lost their jobs, and at the same time we faced food riots, and this now, it's going to hit us very hard as the poorest of the poor. But I'm calling on South Africans, as the president has called, to say that let's work together. There's no time for us to politics about people's life. There's no time to politic about the poverty. Poverty is real in this country, and we must face it head on, and we must fight against it. Time for us to be pointing fingers have gone. Let us save those whom we can save. Let us not have any more disaster. Let this be the lesson, and this one be the last one.
Thapelo Mohapi, thank you so much for your time and coming on to the show this afternoon. Thapelo Mohapi from Abahlali, baseMjondolo. He's the General Secretary, saying that people are desperate, people are angry, and of course people need housing and land.